Alright, finishing off this series with the NBA Pacific Division, my biggest concern as well as a wild card that can positively or negatively impact them for the season. This is the best division in the league and possibly one of the best divisions in NBA history, and each team has a chance to be a top 5 seed, and all of them has a really good duo, all that could play well together, and some of them even have a third star in the mix. With that being said, we're going to start with Phoenix. Alright, so my main concern for the Phoenix Suns is their defense. I know they completed their offensive goals with getting Bradley Beal, trading for Nurkic, as well as filling out their bench with shooters and a good six-man in Eric Gordon, but now they need to focus on their defense. They do have some question marks at defense where it comes to how can Booker play on defense with a team where he doesn't have to really carry offense too much. He can actually focus a little bit more on defense, as well as KD and his ability to guard multiple positions, as well as either Bradley Beal or Devin Booker guarding the point guard, as well as Josh Okogie, whether he can guard perimeter players that consistently to end up being a stopper like how Aaron Gordon was in their finals run for the Denver Nuggets, or even in years past with other star players. So I would say the biggest question for them is defense. They still have questions perimeter-wise as well as interior-wise with Nurkic and whoever their backup's going to be. So I would have to say their defense is their biggest concern. Alright, so for the wild card, I got Bradley Beal, and I mainly have to pick him because he's a point guard of this team and he never played that in his career, and he's going to have to facilitate for the other two players on the court, not named Booker or Durant. Booker and Durant are probably going to get it more in one-on-one situations, on the elbow, on the wing, and in pick and rolls. So he doesn't have to worry too much about them because they can get their buckets at their own pace. But I think him trying to help out the rest of the team so they stay involved, stay in rhythm. So once the time comes where they're going to have to maybe double team Booker or Durant, those players will be ready and in rhythm to hit shots and make plays for them. So that's why Beal's my wild card. Can he really shoot efficiently as a third option and be a third option where he's not going to get as much volume, as well as facilitate for the team where they need a lot of that, with Booker and Durant probably looking for their own shots within this offense. My main concern for the LA Lakers is their chemistry. They're bringing back 6 players from the team last year, and now they have a whole new roster, and with LeBron's style of play, it's harder for some players to adjust to his style of play than others, and that really occurred with the 2018 season when they brought a lot of veteran players, but they all weren't really good to play with LeBron, and he had to switch them out mid-season. But these aren't players that are veterans that know their roles within their teams for the past 5 to 10 years. These are players that are in their first contracts or just finished their first contracts going into a second contract with the Lakers, that are trying to become valuable role players or even starters in some cases. And I think with that, them still trying to find themselves within the league is the real concern for them. Can they attain that as well as have the chemistry with the rest of the lineup with LeBron, AD, and D'Lo and Austin Reeves, and really become a team that can contend in the playoffs, maybe even for a championship? My wildcard for the Los Angeles Lakers is D'Lo, and that's due to the fact that he had a very poor performance in the playoffs, and with that leads to the new season where he has to become a more efficient player, more consistent player, and that involves his ability to ISO as a guard, especially with a team with LeBron and AD where they can't do a lot of stuff perimeter-wise. They're more interior players where they're going to really get their buckets. To have another perimeter scorer that can ISO is very good for them, and a very accomplished shooter, and he has a chance to do that. He's done it in the past with Brooklyn and the Wolves, but now I think he just needs to bring that within an offense that's not going to be really him being the primary player but more of a secondary player, and it would help them tremendously. But again, this can hurt them because he's not a great player defensively, and if his offensive game's off, it's really easy for them to switch to a Gabe Vincent and really change their team dynamic that way. My biggest concern for the Sacramento Kings is their defense. They're not really a top defense, but even the little improvement they have over the year helped them propel them into a playoff spot. And I think if they continue to go into that direction of becoming a better defensive team, maybe leading them into the top half of playoff teams, being a top defense would really help them because their offense can only go so far, and they still have a lot of potential within that offense, but their defense is what's going to bring them a lot more wins, especially in the playoffs, and this will help them a lot, just more buying into what Mike Brown is about, and that's defense. A lot of his teams in the past years have been defensive teams, so I would say defense is their biggest concern. My wildcard for the Sacramento Kings is Domantas Sabonis, and that's due to his weaknesses, and it was very exploitable in the playoffs with his inability to shoot as well as his size as a center, as Looney was able to rebound very well against him, as well as Draymond using his shooting against him and basically sagging off, forcing him to shoot and cutting off passing lanes for Sabonis. If the coaching staff can really help him get into better situations where it would lead him more to the basket and maybe help him, I would say, get more useful handoffs where he doesn't have to stay too much on the three-point line and make a decision, leading to players to sag off of him, but to play him more up front with more quicker passes as well as handoffs would help them tremendously and would make them maybe go to a next level of them being a playoff contender. Now with the Warriors, I think their biggest concern is the starting lineup, and their starting lineup can go as follow, whether it's Wiggins that ends up being in the lineup, or Chris Paul, or even Looney being in the lineup. It can be either of those things. Obviously, it's going to be a hard decision for Steve Kerr because I think they all deserve to be on the starting lineup, but with Chris Paul's, I'd say, stronghold of him saying, I'm going to be a starter, and just how efficient he is as a starter and how much he really helps Stephen Curry and even Klay Thompson, giving them better shots, more quality shots, even though Draymond has done that for a long time. Having another person in that lineup does not hurt them. It really helps them. But I think with this starting lineup, they're going to have to change based on who they play. I don't think having lineups with Paul in there when they're facing maybe more guard-oriented teams that can really force Curry to play defense more, Klay to play defense more, knowing that he kind of declined since his injuries, and other teams with maybe bigger players where you can't have, I would say, Paul, as he could maybe be a mismatch for a bigger player. So I think they're going to have to kind of pick and choose when they put any one of those players in the lineup, whether it's going to be a bigger lineup with Looney and Wiggins, or just a lineup with them playing small ball, maybe having Draymond at the center with Wiggins, or even just having Looney and Paul in the lineup, kind of just a real big and a small with Wiggins as the sixth man. I think they have a lot of chances to have different lineups, but you're going to have to play the right lineup at the right time, and it can't be politics and just having Chris Paul just continuously be in the starting lineup, even though he may cause weaknesses throughout that starting lineup. Alright, so for my wild card, I got Andrew Wiggins, and this mostly has to do with Klay Thompson's eventual decline of play, and I think he'll still be that consistent shooter, but I don't think he's going to have as much explosive plays where you'd see him go off for maybe 20 points in a quarter, have like 8 threes or 10 threes in a game. I don't think a lot of those are going to come as much, and with that kind of makes their offense decline, especially with Jordan Poole being gone, especially in that last year where they really needed it. in points against the Lakers. They didn't get that, and now brings the point of Andrew Wiggins. Now that he's going to consistently be in the lineup, this gives him a chance to be one of the leading scorers on their team and give him more chances for explosive play due to Klay Thompson declining as well as Jordan Poole not being there anymore. This would be really good for them, especially from an efficiency standpoint, because him being more athletic, it gives him more chances to cut to the rim, where you'd see Chris Paul and Draymond be able to see him, as well as Looney when he's at the top of the key with the ball, and also gives him the spacing due to Klay Thompson and Steph Curry being on the floor as well. I think this helps him a lot and gives him the opportunity to become a real consistent scorer and really show people why he was the first overall pick years ago. Now with the LA Clippers, my biggest concern for them is the health of Kawhi and Paul George. It's been years. Either Paul George is injured or Kawhi, and it really hinders their progress within making a championship run. They had opportunities when they were in the conference finals for the first time in their history, but Kawhi got hurt the next season. They obviously didn't have Kawhi for that season. He couldn't really do anything, but once they were 100%, they had a good chance and were in good seeding for the playoffs at 5, but still they had issues in the season. They were trying to keep both of them healthy, keeping them both out of the lineup, and that caused them to kind of drop a little bit, but they still kept their standings. And at the end there, they really looked like they could have beat the Suns in that series, but Kawhi went down again, and it goes back to them just being healthy. But I think the rest of their team is fine. They built a proper team to contend, but now they just need the stars to show up in those moments, and they have, but it's just been injuries that's been really hindering them. For my wild card, I got Russell Westbrook, and that's due to the fact of how good he played at the end of that Suns series, and he shown that he still has something left, and I think the coaching staff's really going to have to help him become more of an efficient player through his strengths, one of it being his ability to drive. And I think with the 3-point percentage of their team in general in the past few years, that could really help Westbrook become a little bit more efficient in that area, and he could still help other players like Zubats in the pick and roll game to get him more involved, and in him pushing the ball up the court and helping other players that are better in transition, and adds another dimension to their game other than the half court where Paul George and Kawhi usually dominate. So I think Westbrook brings a different dynamic to that team and makes them more lethal in a different way, but the coaching staff's really going to have to downplay his weaknesses and really hide it with his shooting and decision making, and really elevate his strengths on the team. And it helps better that they have the team for that. So I think that's their wild card.